Hi, I'm Dr. Guy Castley from the School of Environment and Science at Griffith University. I'm standing on our Gold Coast campus here at Griffith University looking at a combination of the built environment and our natural spaces. So on our Griffith University campuses we have a range of natural environments. Some of them are natural remnants. We have a patch of blackbutt forest on the Gold Coast, for example, but we also have native species planted in our landscape gardens. These plantings and natural landscapes and habitats provide environments that are used by certain species. Some of our wildlife have become adapted to living in these urban spaces, and species like these are what we call urban winners. Many of these species are opportunistic in their behaviors, so that they actually utilize the resources available to them in transformed landscapes or urban gardens, for example. So many gardens in Australia have planted plants such as these, our grevilleas, and some of our urban winners have actually utilized these plants to actually their benefit. So species like rainbow lorikeet, some of the other nectivorous species, all utilize these to their advantage. Some of our other urban winners include animals that actually rely on or make use of urban waste, for example, or waste generation. So we have our Australian white ibis that actually make use of our refuse tips. They congregate in these areas. So these species are what we call our urban winners. They're the ones that take advantage of what's happening in these urban landscapes. But on the flip side of that, we also have species that actually are urban losers. So with land clearing, with the removal of natural vegetation and habitats such as hollow-bearing trees that reduce the availability of these features in the landscape, we lose some of the species that are dependent on those resources. And these species are typically our specialists that are either dependent on those features or have a specific diet, and those species that they require are then no longer in the landscape once they become transformed either through land clearing or urbanization. Some of these species could include glossy black cockatoos, for example, that are very specific in their diet. They could include hollow nesting species such as possums and gliders. But possums, again, are probably on the cusp where they quite happily live in people's backyards and roofs in the urban landscape. So when we start thinking about urban biodiversity, we can see that some species are going to benefit, some species are going to be less looked after in the urban landscape, but urban patches and fragments that we retain of natural habitats in these areas are quite important to make sure that we retain a large complement of biodiversity. So we want to have some of our specialist species in these areas, we want to have some of our urban winners. They all add to the preservation of biodiversity in our urban landscapes, but we need to retain the natural landscapes in these areas that add connectivity for species to move about our urban environments. So you need to have pockets of natural vegetation where species that do require more specialized habitats are able to move from one location to the next quite easily. And in doing so, some of these landscape areas around urban buildings, for example, provide stepping stones for these species to move from one area to the next.